Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Lee Goldstein. I'm the trading director at 10 Minute Trades, and this is episode 17 of the 10 Minute Trade podcast. And I've been doing weekly wrap ups, and we're going to do it a little bit differently this week. We've got a conversation with one of our members who's a winning trader, Mark Carithers, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly.
That's correct.
And I want to welcome Mark and say hello. Mark has been a trade room member. Well, let me start. Mark, let me just say hello. It's great to meet you for the first time. It's awesome. So it's
Nice
nice
to
to
meet you
see
too.
you. I guess my first question is why don't you tell us just a little bit about you? How old are you? Where you live? Just some personal stuff so people get a feel for who you are.
Yeah, I always got to do the math. So I believe I'll be 44 this year. Um, so 44, originally from Michigan, live in California. Came out here as a aerospace engineer. Been doing it for about 20 years. That's my 9 to 5. Slowly venturing into the entrepreneur world with real estate, and been trading for 5 years. Futures. I tried it all. Futures, forex, options, but my main thing now is doing the futures, obviously.
Okay. And did you dislike trading Forex? I mean, we've always heard, I did a little Forex trading, not much. I didn't like Forex trading for news, especially because the brokers tended to manipulate price before reports. I was just wondering, were you trading Forex for news or just experimentally in the beginning of your career?
I tried forex to swing trade it, so holding it for multiple days. I actually don't mind doing that. I just went away from it just because I had, just like any trader, you have the big hurdles at the beginning, learning how to actually trade and things like that, and just kind of finding who you are in the trading world. And so I haven't really been back to it. And then I tried a little bit of just testing out some forex trading around news with the JLBB software. I couldn't quite get the settings right, how many pips they
Mhm.
call it, how many pips to have and things like that. And then I kind of just fell off and just went with what was working. So I didn't go back to that either.
Okay. And what got your interest in trading? Why trading? How'd you find out about it, and how'd you get started?
Ooh, how did I find out about it? I think probably Simple Trading, John Carter. I don't think it was called that back then. And then just random emails. I don't think one person did. I just wanted to do something that the reason why I trade is really actually not even for the money. I wanted to be able to do something on my own without relying on someone else to, you know, produce income ultimately, but just have my own my own trade, uh, pun intended, but basically have something that's just me. I'm a very introvert type person, so I wanted to be able to do something where I didn't have to involve anybody else. I could just take my money and make money off of it. And the goal was obviously to have some type of income from that. And I didn't have to rely on, going a job or a corporation or relying on, getting sales from some other people. So that was my biggest factor.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned John Carter. When he was with Hubert, I've mentioned this in the room a lot of times. They were the two people
Yeah.
probably that taught me the most when I first started out. I don't remember what they
Yeah.
were called then either. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
It was something else.
Trade
Yeah.
the
I can't remember
Markets.
what
I
it's
think it
called.
was
Maybe it's
tradethemarkets.com.
simpler options for me or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that was even after
Yes.
me,
Yeah.
but I learned a lot from them. Did you go into lots of different trade rooms in the beginning, or
Try it on.
tell me a couple of some of the experiences you had, where you went. Just curious what many
What?
traders have the same experience, which is kind of crazy, but they go to various rooms, they
Yeah.
find mentors, etc. What was your experience?
Uh, I did Polaris Trading Group. Did I do Busby's? I did John Carter for a while. The thing with John Carter was options. And I wanted to do options, but I didn't know what options were. So that was kind of my way of just learning about options, period. And now options is more so something that I want to do just for like longer term. I knew for a fact that I wanted to do futures for income. I steered away from futures at the beginning because I don't know if you had this experience, but it's like everybody tells you don't do futures when I started trading. So like it got me scared. So it's like everybody was saying, don't do futures, don't do futures, you're gonna lose all your money. So I like did not even look at that for my first like couple of years of trading. Trade rooms, I just tried everything just to figure out what made sense to me. I tried. There's so many people. I have like a journal that I kept of all those people, but I tried a whole bunch of trading rooms. My goal was just to kind of pick what everybody was doing, and then kind of just sit down on my own for a while without any influence and kind of figure out what my personality was, which took a while
Okay.
because there's always things coming in. There's always new indicators. And then you always, if you're new, you're never sure that, oh, you always think something else could work. And actually what really worked was just not listening to anything and just dumbing it down for me.
Right. Right. How long do you think it took you to? It's funny, just to back up for a second, what you say about futures, that everyone told you don't trade futures. It was sort of the opposite for me. What they said was don't trade news because you'll lose all your
Mm.
money trading news. And I was the most interested in trading news because I couldn't stand being in the market, actually.
Yeah, I got both of those too. I got don't trade during news. That was like everyone's number one rule. Don't trade during rules
Right.
or during news.
Yeah, in some ways, there's some truth to that. Maybe don't trade during news if you have no idea what you're doing, you know?
Well, I mean, I really believe in, as you know, we'll probably get to it later. I like to carry a position into news, but only way I'm carrying that is if I'm already profitable on my runner and my runner's at break even. Otherwise, I'm just going to get out the trade.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so I agree with that. Get whipsawed out.
I definitely want to get into, your some of your specific setups. Just a couple of other, just background stuff. How did you find us?
uh, Had to be one of those trade Saturday things. You're on agenda with somebody else that I was already
Okay.
following. It had to be, and I was already trying. I don't know if you remember this. I think I was already trying to trade the open, and that was my big thing when I first started. And I was trying to write my own code for Ninja Trader,
Hmm.
and I couldn't get my code. I couldn't get it to work quite correctly on the time. I had it where it would trigger, but I couldn't get the time right or something like that. And then I stumbled onto JOVB when it had to be part of one of those, those Saturday things where you're on the agenda.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh man, they already have the software that I need. And that's when I emailed you and said, hey, does your software do this? That's exactly what I'm looking for, because I always want the trade to open. I don't know if you remember, that was my big thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
was trading to open, because I was seeing some success, but I didn't want to manually put orders on. I wanted to automatically put orders on it after a certain time, which is funny. I don't do the time thing anymore, but that was the genesis of what I wanted. I wanted like 5 minutes. I forget what I was trying to do back then, but after a certain time after open, I wanted to put brackets on that range.
Hmm.
So, and your software already did it.
Okay, good. All right. It's funny, I found us the same way, just through someone or through an event. And because I was a member before I started working here, I was the same thing, looking to find software that I tried to write software, had someone write it for me, and I wasn't happy. They never could do it properly. And then when I found these guys, I realized why try to do what's already been done? It's
Yeah,
easy.
right. Reinvent the wheel. That's
Exactly.
like one of the main rules. Yeah.
Yep. And so I would, did you start out, how long did it take before you started did you lose a lot of money in the beginning? Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about, how long it took you to get good with your trading.
I think it took, I don't know, maybe I'm the norm, maybe I'm the slower, because I hear people say it takes like 1 or 2 years. I say it took me like 3 to 3.5. I was messing around with a lot of things, jumping from different, between, the biggest thing for me now that I realized thinking back on what my biggest issue was, you have to have a different mindset if for a time frame. And so therefore your trading mentality got to be totally different. And I struggled with that because if I was short-term trading for futures, I can't apply that to options and vice versa if I'm trying to swing trade and hold the position. And so that mindset was really screwing with me for a while. And I blew out. I used to trade news. Speaking of news, I used to do option trades over news. So I was always interested in news, but I would do like the whole like sell one standard deviation, iron condor, which works like, as they say, 90% of the time. But then that one time it doesn't work, you're done, right? So I think it was a 20K account or something at one point because of Google's earnings got me, and it was basically the whole account was done
Mhm.
overnight. And then I blew out some futures accounts before, and so to actually say I'm probably just getting to break even in the past year and a half because I was negative, pretty negative, but I was persistent. And again, I had my 9 to 5, so I really wasn't worried about the money. I was more, again, focused on getting that trait where I can actually sit down in front of a computer and and make some money and do something on my own. And that was the goal. It really wasn't the money. I knew the money would come once I formalized and systematically came up to something that I can claim that was my own. So yeah, I would say like 3.5 years before I can say I had something good going.
Okay. I mean, that's not very long, I think. I've been trading a long time, and I still have periods where I'm not making money. There's times when it goes through cycles. It
Yeah, it's
definitely
always
goes
a
through
drawdown.
cycles.
There's always a drawdown. That's to be known. Like you always say, there's always different market conditions, and we'll get to it later. My biggest thing is being able to gauge volatility and adjust my trading to volatility to the market. So then it's not just going to be a blatant same thing all the time when markets change like that. So then I can adjust. But yeah, you're going to have drawdowns, and that's the thing too. When you're stressed, I had friends that I started trading with. Trade Smart University was one of the big places that I learned to trade from. I actually still talk to one of the trainers there. He started his own company, uh, and he's doing really well with his own trading company. And so I still talk to him. But some other peers that I had that I still talk to, they just went gung ho and went straight into trading and quit their job without actually having real success. And of course, they stopped trading because it's too
Right.
much pressure on them.
Well, I think a lot of new traders, there's a lot of mistakes that that we make, traders make over and over. We talk about it. They trade when they're not ready. They haven't practiced enough. They trade
Right.
too much money when their
Yep.
account isn't
Risk
large
management.
enough. All the normal things that people seem to make the same mistakes over and over. So, um, it's very important to try and be disciplined, but I'm going to ask you about some of your rules. What about family support? When you blew out that account, I would think you're married, you have kids from what I know.
Yep.
Was that something your wife knew about? Does your wife support your trading? How's your family support?
Yes. She knows that I was unsuccessful in the beginning for sure.
Mhm.
The number she does not know about, but she knows that like I would get frustrated. I was very emotionally tied to my trading. So the irony of it is she was like thinking that you shouldn't do this because it was so stressful, and she knew the days that I would have the bad days back in the day, and then now that I don't say anything ever, she just thinks that's like she doesn't know how well I'm doing or know how bad I'm doing
Okay.
because it's like it's not tied to my lifestyle anymore. I think that was the biggest thing. You can't take it personal. And as an engineer, I was thinking you got to be right. There's a formula for everything. That was my other big hurdle too in the beginning is, you always think there's a solution as an engineer. You always think, oh, if you do this, you do that, then you're going to have success. But that doesn't work in the market. It is pretty random, right? There is some randomness to it. Even though you did something right, you can do everything right, and the result might not directly be, what you want, but doesn't mean you didn't do everything right. So that's what I had to disassociate with.
That's a really, really good point. You have to, when you're trading, you have to be able to accept the randomness and the fact you could be perfect on all your analysis and it still might not work out. It's a great point. What about how do you balance so you have a full-time 9 to 5?
Yep.
Do you go to an office every day or do you work at home or?
Uh, COVID thing, we were not going to work. Lately, they're starting to go back in the office, but it's very flexible. So like, I'm literally 5 minutes from the office, so I could literally come home and trade and go back. But as you'll probably find out, I only trade Globex for the most part. I'm pretty much done by the time the market opens, and that's 6:30 here. So that's like when all my daughter and my wife is waking up. So I can pretty much have my full trading day done in terms of futures by the time they wake up. So it doesn't really impede on any of my day-to-day stuff at all.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. So your day job, you're essentially what time you're in California, so you're California time. What time do you get up in the morning to start trading? And how long do
4,
you go on what's your average day like as a trader?
I would say my average day is 4 to 6:30. If that, usually I'm sometimes done by before 6, but 4 to 6:30 at the most, because I hold out for the NQ open, especially if I'm holding a trade, into that open.
Okay. Okay, so I didn't realize that. So you're not, um, have you ever thought of quitting your 9 to 5 and becoming a full-time trader?
So I think my mentality would change. That's what I'm really worried about. So I think if anything, I'm ramping up on my real estate side. I don't think I ever would want to change that time frame. I think I'll always be 4 to 6:30, and if, when I do, retire from being an engineer, I'll just do the real estate thing and be working on, with clients and stuff throughout the day. I don't think I'll ever add time. I don't want to sit in front of the computer longer than that. It's just enough. I don't think I go more than that ever. So
That's
long story short, I don't think I'll be a full-time trader. If a full-time trader is considered somebody that sits in front of your computer the whole day, I'll never be doing that.
Well, it's interesting. In the old days, we used to think, quote unquote, full-time trader, but you can potentially make full-time money
Right.
without being a full-time trader. And if you can get to that point,
Yeah.
that's success as a trader. And I think that's
Yeah. I
part
try
of
to
the
limit my
attraction.
exposure. Yeah,
Good, I'm sorry.
exactly.
I was going to say that's part of the attraction of our company, why people get involved with us. Excuse me. They see the way our software in and out of the market, not watching the markets all day long. That's probably how most people find us because they don't
Yep.
want to sit in front of the computer all day.
And you don't have to when you know what you're doing. And even so, my goal is to I'm working on holding trades even longer than even from the 4 to 6:30 time frame. It's just I don't want to have to manage at that point. The thing is, because you do have those rare trend days. It's what like 15% of the days. So it's like when those trend days do happen, that's what I'm looking at trying to capitalize on. But you don't need to. If the market's going in one direction, what is there to man? What is there to look at, right? You set it and you put your target in. You know where your stop is, and let it do its thing, and then come back maybe at the end of the day to see where you're at.
Mhm.
But but besides that, I'm not looking to do anything more than that. I don't think you need to. Like you said, you can. The good thing about trading 4 to 6, because as you know, most of the news is around 5 a.m. All those big news events come that kind of change the market or give you a little pep in the step. That's all I want to trade anyways, and that alone, everything's scalable, right? So if I'm trading 2 contracts now, as my account grows, that could become 4 contracts and 6 contracts. I could do the exact same thing and make more money. So what's the point of trying to add time? The whole point of this is to reduce time. I don't want to trade time for
Right.
money anymore. That's what a 9 to 5 does.
I agree with that. Okay, so tell me about your current trading now. So what are your favorite instruments that you're trading? I already know this, but for the people watching, the what are your favorite trades? We'll start to get into it a little specifically.
From favorite to least is NASDAQ, gold, and crude.
Okay.
So I like trading um, the NASDAQ starting at, what I've been doing, it's been really successful the past 7 months. It took me a while to get my charts and everything the way I wanted it to look. I use the tab option in NinjaTrader, and I have tick strike up, and I have Globex, and during the Globex, I have crude, NASDAQ, gold, and I have those tick strike markets up. And what I do is I use the VWAP. I use the 1F standard deviation band. That's kind of my decision point. And I started at the London Open because my theory is, during the Asia session, you don't really get much movement, and I'm trying to catch the movement after there's like stuff going on. So I started at the London Open. Although I've seen lately it doesn't really make that big a difference. It's kind of now just a superstition at this point. Um, and so what I do is I trade early is I want to be in that band. And when I'm in that band, I'm trading the up and down movements within that band and based off the tick strike. And so once I get a break of that band, then that's when I know I have a chance for a good runner. And that's basically all I do. And what I do is try to structure those movements around. I look at news and I look when news is coming. I noticed for a while that there's sometimes there'll be, the whole buy the news, sell the rumor thing. Sometimes you'll get run-ups into the news and it'll follow through, or you'll get, whatever direction, you'll get one good direction going into the news. And then maybe the news will change that direction or go with that direction. So my theory is at that point, like I was talking about, if have a runner and I'm at break even, I just ride through the news. If I get stopped out, I get stopped out, or if it keeps going, I'm in good shape. Those are the opportunities that I'm trying to capitalize because, again, my whole theory is just trying to get as much as I can out of each trade with news support versus just, I know the JLBB is just get in, get out. But like I said, I'm trying to just capitalize on movements, period. So that's where we differ a little bit philosophy-wise.
Okay, so that's a lot to unpack in there. Let me just go over a couple of
Yeah,
things. That was a lot of info, safe, especially, I'm thinking of someone who has never traded before. You're saying a
yeah,
lot of things they don't know what we mean. So I just want to go back real quick and just explain a couple of things for people watching. Um, when Mark mentions time, remember he's in California, so when he says 4 to 6:30, he's 7 a.m. Eastern time to 9:30. 9:30 is the open of the Nasdaq market, which is a very volatile and a very potentially profitable market to trade the open. He also mentioned something called the VWAP. The VWAP is an indicator that's part of the Ninja Trader programmer, the Ninja Trader platform that we use to trade futures. And it allows Mark to create a band. He was saying, well, if it's in the band or out of the band, he creates a visual band that he can see. And when price is inside that band, it allows him to take trades in either direction, up or down, short or long, it's called. And then when price is outside of the band, and Mark, please correct me if I say anything incorrect, if price is outside of the band, above or below it, if he's below the band, he's generally looking towards short trades, down movement. If price is above the band, he's looking for more upward oriented trades. And he's starting his analysis at 2 a.m. Eastern time, which is the London Open. And that's so I think I've unpacked a little bit for people that don't know all the terminology that we use.
yeah. You did a good job of
Good.
dumbing it down. I was just ranting on, so
No,
yeah.
it's fine.
Thanks.
I mean, because we're so used to the jargon,
Yeah.
we take it all for granted. That's fine. So tell people a little bit, and we talk about this in the room all the time. Let's concentrate first on gold and say the gold, your gold trading. So in the old days, my memory was that you did used to trade the gold open specifically. And I could be
Yep.
wrong, but you've definitely changed now because you're normally more often in a trade when I get into the trade room. So maybe
Right.
talk a little bit again, just maybe go over it one more time. How do you decide what direction is going to be the best direction that day for, say, trading gold into the open? And then maybe you could say how you then change your mindset after the news.
Okay. Um, I have I literally split in my mind. I have two different markets. I have the market before open, which can go any direction, and I have the market after open, which I believe can go any direction. It's not dependent on the Globex, so I disassociate those two. Then on top of that, what I do for gold especially, Nasdaq is something I do more daily, and then gold is more so. As you know, I like trading gold around news that happens around. It usually happens at 5:20, 5:30, which is around the gold open anyways. But if there's big news around that time, I know that coming into that trade, there's already people in London and overseas that are getting ready for that news and things like that. So long story short, I have that band. When I get up at 4, I look at the band. I see, hey, where is this trading in reference to that band? Typically, it's most likely inside the band. But if it's already below band, I got a downtrending market already. So I'm looking for a pullback to get in short. And I use that verification based off of, let's say the market goes back towards that band and then I get some negative readings on tick strike, then I'll go ahead and get short. And then I have a fairly big stop. We can talk about stops later, but the way I try to make my stops now are related to the average true range of the day. That's what I was trying to tell you. I'm trying to adapt and be based off of the volatility of the market instead of just blatantly just throwing a number in there. So I'm trying to be logical about how I do my stops. Um, and so then what I do is, and so then that's how I get in the trade early, basically. And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Okay.
The good thing too is I do three ATR, so 3 times ATR. It's usually a really big stop. I know we've talked about this before, and the reason why I do that is because I've noticed that there's many times that I was trying to just so focused on how much I was risking, and I would risk like let's say it was like $200, and I was risking $200, and I get stopped out, and then I wouldn't even give a chance for the market to go my direction, and then go my direction right after that. So I got very comfortable with having a huge stop that I don't want to always take every time. But I noticed that, there's not very many times where the market will just shoot and grab your stop and then go the other way if you have a huge stop. What tends to happen is the market just goes against me pretty bad. And you can kind of gauge it with tick straight. If it's like just blaring to the opposite direction that you don't want to go, then I'm like, okay, I need to probably get out of this as soon as possible. But if it's just like a slow uptick, and I have boundaries. Like for instance, I like to plot the prior week's high and low because a lot of people look at that prior week high and low, and if it's near that, and I'm getting towards that, and my stop's above that, then I'm like, I'm gonna wait and see what happens there. So when we talk about having stops, it's not just like I'm just gonna sit there and wait for my stop to get hit half the time. I'm pretty experienced now to know like it's time to start managing this and not take that big a loss or not. I forgot what your question was. I started ranting about what I was doing.
That's
So
okay. No, I
you can
think
stop
you
me if you
answered
want
most
to.
of it.
Yeah.
I was asking, how you decided to get into a trade. I think you've answered
Yeah.
it. You look for your trend,
Yep.
you find your trend. How are you determining specifically ATR? And for listeners out there, ATR is a range indicator. I forgot, I'm drawing a
It's
blank.
just the average true range.
Thank you.
It's just
ATR,
you
average
literally,
true range.
yeah. You could do it a billion different ways. You could simply just put it on the market watch thing and put the ATR while there's 14. That's the default. Um, you can put on the chart. I don't like too much stuff on my chart. I just need that number. So like
Okay.
every day, coming in a day, I look what the number is. It actually helps me gauge volatility too. So I know for the past few days, NASDAQ volatility has been decreasing. At the beginning of the week, it was 32, and today it was 28, right? So I know that the average movements during the day is getting a little bit less. But that just gives me how many ticks I want to just be a stop. So I'll say 28 times 3 is going to be my stop for today. And again, like I said, I adjust as I get in the trade, but I just trying to want to gauge it off of volatility versus just blatantly put a stop. That just means nothing but a price to me. Sometimes it
Right,
doesn't
right.
work,
That's very
especially for
interesting.
NASDAQ.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I like that approach. ATR times three is what you're using. So
Yeah,
that's
because
very interesting.
yeah, it's basically going 3 times the average true range of that day, and you don't want to be more than if it's more than that, it's probably not going to work, right? So
Right, right. And the whole idea of a big stop is something that I have to say, really, you opened my eyes to that. I was very, very hesitant for risk reasons, for hosting the room and being afraid people would get stopped out way too big of a loss. But it's like you said, when you have a big stop, it rarely hits that big stop because you're going to manage your way down into a
yeah,
smaller stop, especially if the trade's working for you. And if
yep,
it's not working for you, you should probably be managing that stop down as well, so that you
right,
don't
exactly.
don't sit there and watch it.
It
So
just gives you time to be right versus, there's volatility in every market. So especially NASDAQ. NASDAQ is the reason why I started doing this because there were so many times I'd have a tight stop and I'd miss out on like a $1,500 trade because I had a $200 stop. So it's
exactly,
like,
yep.
it sucks.
And that was exactly what happened to me today. If you remember the Nasdaq
Yep.
trade, it literally hit my 150 tick stop by
Yeah.
10 ticks, and then it went
Yeah.
and hit my large target. But I would have been stopped out because we've
I would have been
discussed
stumped out. Yeah.
we've discussed using a 200 tick stop on that Nasdaq open move, which it makes sense maybe on a Friday when it's more
Oh
volatile
yeah.
and, it's a little bit riskier on a Friday because of the nature of Fridays. Um,
Yeah, I don't mess with Fridays, but I would have been stopped out on that one too if I did
right.
that. Nature of the beast again. It's like sometimes you do everything right and it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
And even Nasdaq is so like volatile that you could always make a case that you win, but it was just happening way too much when I had too small of a stop, and it just didn't make sense
Right.
to risk that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Nasdaq since I mean right now for me that's my favorite open. I just find I've always enjoyed trading the Nasdaq even before I got to JOBB. So
Yeah, I've been screaming about that one for a while.
I know, yeah. So take us through your you get up and then take us through your approach to the Nasdaq through an open. What's your average, the way you look at it, figure direction. I know I may be asking the same thing twice, but
Yeah, no worries.
go through your Nasdaq setup for an
It,
open.
it's the same thing. If I'm not in a trade on the actual open, um, I'm looking at the band again, looking to see if I'm above or below it to give me a direction. If I'm outside of the band, I'm very biased towards. Here's something that I think I didn't mention, which is starting to be more systematic instead of like a feel, because I'm starting to get a feel for Nasdaq, and that's kind of why I was very hesitant to say I could teach it, because I don't know if some things are teachable when like you just kind of know a market, right? So I feel like I just knew Nasdaq to the point where I couldn't tell you why I did something a certain way. But there are some good indicators that I've realized. So if I'm above the deep, because Nasdaq does this a lot, it'll go against whatever trend was before Globex. And again, having that mentality that okay, Globex is one thing, but when the open opens, it's a totally different market. So like having the whole I'm stuck on going long after the open, it goes away, because Globex to open is just different for me. And you've seen it. The Nasdaq can just turn on a dime at the open. But anyways,
Explain what
but I do have
Globex is for people that don't know.
Globex is just basically the market from when the U.S. closes at what is it 1 p.m. my time, 4 your time,
Mhm.
to all the way till 9:30 Eastern to 6:30 Pacific time.
Okay.
And
And
so
it's
that's the
actually
Globex
changed
time.
now. They don't close quite
Oh,
that
good.
early now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it 1:15 or 4:15 or
No,
something
they
like that
don't do
now?
that close. The indexes don't close
Oh, they
anymore.
don't.
No, they're
Oh,
keep
never
so
mind
for
then.
us it's like was it 5 to 6, right? 5 to 6?
Oh, got you.
Yeah.
But the orders, you could definitely tell if you have tick strike that the orders are not as frequent as during the open or the U.S. session. So up until that point, I do have a bias, and in order for me to change my bias, I have to get a strong tick strike reading the opposite way, which is the 12 magnitude for me, and that's I think I don't know if you asked me that, but that was what my big determinant is. So if let's say we're way above we're above my one standard VWAP band, and I get a minus 12 on the open, I'll just take that short. But if I get like -7, -8, and then once we get in that VWAP band, now I'm open to go short in that VWAP band, and I'll look for a short then too. But that's how I would change direction.
Okay. And then so just explain why you like Tick Strike so much. Even though to be clear, Tick Strike is not our product. It's an
Yeah, yeah,
indicator we
yeah.
use that we're all using.
Um, I think it just gives me a little bit more confidence to go with what I'm thinking. And also too, I guess maybe I'm a audible person
Mhm.
because I when I hear stuff, I react quicker. I know what I need to hear, and then I don't have to really go look at anything else. I can just look at my trading screen and just hear the values going off. And also it gives me a sense of volatility. If something's going off like crazy and stuff, then I'm tempted to be relaxed and just hold off and let it work its magic instead of before. Even though something would visually move quick when I didn't have tick strike, I don't know. Maybe I always still was like, I call it choke my trades. I would choke my trades and tighten my stop. And now I'm very more relaxed and like for for example, like when tick strike's going off negative, and then even if it goes quiet, I sit still. The only time that I'm gonna like think about managing my risk is if I hear the opposite direction multiple times and there's some change. I think it just gives me more confidence because I really feel like the market is very random. Again, like we said at the beginning, like you could do everything right. You could be, your probabilities could be great for every day, but then at any instant, any moment, amount of orders can come in and change it all. And so I feel like that gives me a sense of comfortability to see, I can hear those, that change in the market instead of just not knowing, you know.
Right.
I that's why.
Okay, good. I mean, I think a lot of us feel the same way. I like to, it's also great to be able to hear orders coming in so you don't have to look at another indicator. That was
Right.
very clever on their part, I think. So out of the three opens, so let's talk about oil a little bit. Very often I'll come into the room and you're in an oil trade way before I'm even looking at oil. And once again, you're up my time pretty early. You know,
Yeah.
you're up looking at markets at 7 in the morning, sometimes 6 in the morning Eastern time. So what do you look at in your oil trades? And I mean, I know in the past you've said, hey, you know what? I don't look at that much anymore. I'm just listening for tick strike signals, you know? So you could say that too. How do you
That's
decide
exactly it.
for oil?
So my mechanics of what I do, what I've been doing lately is every 15 minutes I write down the value of each of those markets of what tick strike's saying. And I actually got the short that you were talking about in crude. I just didn't want to mention in the room. I got that short. It was a big trade for me on crude because when I got into when I woke up and was looking at it, I had multiple minus 11s on crude. It was in my band. It was actually at the top of my band. So I had really small risk because I'm thinking, oh, if it doesn't work, then it'll just go up. It'll go up and I'll get stopped out. I could move my stop fairly quick if it doesn't work right away. I already heard a couple minus 11. So I got in short on crude. I forgot what time, but it was around 4 something. And I was able to ride out that whole little down move because of that. Just basically tick strike again. I look and say, I quickly, that's why I like that band. I can hear tick strike, look to say, oh, is that negative reading something worthwhile? If it's above, it's not worthwhile because it's got a long way to go to really be a downtrend to me. But if it's in that band, I'm like, ooh, I can kind of play with this. Maybe I can get into something early and get a runner. So then I'm like, okay, let me try this out. And then I can actually shorten my risk quickly too, because that band is my indecision area. But I had wrote down minus 11, I think at 4, and then I think it was minus 11 around 4:15 or something like that. I had multiple negatives. I was like, okay, this is getting weak. So then I got in.
Okay,
So
great. So let me just, again, for people listening, when Mark says multiple 11s, tick strike's an indicator that shows numbers and colors and it makes a sound. And a negative number 11 is a relatively strong signal on oil. So when you see multiple signals, a negative 11, it gives you a heads up. Maybe you want to go short. And then as he was explaining, he uses his bands and he uses where he is in relation to the band and relation to price. One question I wanted to ask though, just because today I came into the oil room and I didn't really need to look at much of anything to really think it was going to be bearish because it was down over $1. The president had talked yesterday. So how much, and you said something really important, I think, when we were talking about the NQ, having a feel for a market. How often do you find yourself, now that you're experienced, trading on a feeling and using all your indicators less and less? And do you find that you're successful doing that, or do you find it makes you want to go back to being very structured about the way you enter?
so when I do have those feelings, the way I use the JLBB software is exactly why I do it this way, is I use the squeeze play. So let's say I have a feeling it's going to go a certain direction. I hit the 1-click range short, and there's been times where that feeling at that time is not the right feeling, and it'll go opposite my direction. I've noticed that saved me a few times. And that's because it's still, even if you're right, there's still a timing aspect of it, and you need to know when the market believes you're right. Because even though, just like you were right about the short in the Nasdaq, even though you could have got short on one of those retracements, right? Because the market wasn't telling you yet, because the tick strike was going bullish, right? You were right eventually, but it's just things that you still need the market to participate no matter what. It's all timing. And in our business, we have to be, the timing is actually more important than being right. Like we don't have that much leeway as if we were like swing traders, right? That's why I said the mentality's got to be different.
Correct. I agree with that. Um, okay, so the NAS and oil. So let me ask you a little bit about when. How do you decide if you're going to move your stops? In other words, you have a relatively big stop. Let's take, say, the how big of a stop do you use on your average oil trade in the morning?
Lately, it's been 24.
Okay. So that's not really that big of a stop for
No.
crude if you think about it, given the current
Oh, oil.
volatility.
Oil's been, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said gold.
Oh, okay.
Oil's 3 times 17. So that was 34. What's 17 times
51.
3?
So 51, right?
51, yeah.
Okay,
There you
so
go,
that
yeah.
is a relatively big stop for crude because
Yep,
that's over a $500 stop. So
yep.
if you take me through an average crude trade for you, how many positions, and how you would
Uh,
actually manage it specifically, an average trade.
I took 2 contracts. I try to, how I have it triggered is get 1 ATR. So so for lately it's been 17, it's first target, right? And then the first target, then I actually leave the stop um, where it's at until I get something to tell me go otherwise. So again, there's certain things. There's prior week low and high. Those are 2 of my big things because those usually have a reaction. Or if the tick strike goes against me. So if the tick strike starts to beep against me a few times, then I'm gonna tighten my stop. And how I tighten my stop is I just do the typical thing. It's somewhat systematic. I think you don't know this. I don't do a 1 minute chart. I do on crude. I do a 5 minute, and as I do 5 minute, and gold I do 3 minute because gold is kind of slow. So and what I do is I put my stop next to above or below a candle that has a red and green, and then that's how I tighten my stop. So whatever the last swing is, basically, I'll put it above or below that. And another good indicator that I like to do to tighten my stop, although sometimes this could be choking my trade, but I tend to kind of like it. It's the same thing as, I don't think I've told you this. I used to use the squeeze a lot, but I went away from the squeeze just because the squeeze is a little bit slow on changing the
Momentum.
upswing, and all the squeeze is telling you, if you think about it, if you get a really large wick, especially since I use 5 minute candle, then that means that the squeeze is changing.
Hmm.
So if I see a large wick going against me, I'm like, oh, that means the momentum's starting to change, and I'll tighten my stop then too.
Okay. So your engineering background clearly has been an incredible aid in helping you to trade successfully. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, as long as I don't have to always be right. I have to get over that. Yeah,
Right,
for
right.
sure. Yeah. Understanding how things work and understanding what I need to see. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now tell me a
But there's
little bit
always an
about
art to it.
why you like the JOBB software. You know I had to ask you this.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I already said that the fact that you could do the squeeze option is my go-to thing. I do like the range trade too, for like time periods. Although I don't use that much anymore, but the JLVB squeeze feature is the best thing for me. It makes it so I don't have to manually put orders. My biggest thing, I think I said at the beginning, was I I, I don't want to have to manually put orders on the chart. I like to hit a button, and so what the JLVB allows me to do is when I see, a market about to go my way, or I hear it, all I got to do is click a button, and I'm in I have the order placed. I'm not even in the trade. I have it above or below that candle, which for me is a 5 minute candle. So that could be a little bit difference too of why we see different results, because I want the market to prove, especially if I'm going, what we talked about earlier, if I'm on the open and I'm above if I'm going on a counter trend per se from Globex, I want I want the price to prove to me that it's going to come my way. Even though I hear tick strike saying that, it doesn't automatically mean that it's going to go that way, because that could be just a temporary, order against me or whatever. So I like putting using the GLBB to put those orders above and below the candles, and I could just do that with a click of a button. Otherwise, I'd be too slow, especially with NASDAQ, if I had to do it by hand.
I agree. Yep. So those are all the reasons that I enjoy the software. And I will say that Mark was instrumental in helping us to develop some of the features in the new version of the software. He gave us the idea for the squeeze play, and the squeeze play is it's a method that we can know the direction before a trade. It was very important, different concept to actually think about knowing a direction before a trade. I think has changed trading for a lot of people. It was a very clever, very smart upgrade to the software. If you had to give new traders advice, how to avoid lots of the pitfalls that we all have gone through, but for some reason traders refuse to take advice when they're new. What are some of the things that you would tell a new trader or your son when he's 20 years old and he wants to start trading? What are some of the things you would tell people to try and get them up to speed quicker and safer?
So personally, what I believe is don't copy anyone, which sounds crazy because a lot of people, that's why the whole, my trade room philosophy, but I think, but it's good to watch people, but then don't emulate them 100%, especially if you're like me as an engineer, you want to know why things work. So it's hard. It's really hard. I think that's why I say engineers don't do well in this business because it's hard for us to copy things if we don't truly believe in it. And the only way to truly believe in it is, obviously take some time with the market. Obviously back testing, I would say always paper trading is good, but then don't paper trade forever too. I know people that paper trade for like 20 years. So it's like, there's different gradual levels, but I think the number one thing is find your identity. There's a billion different ways that things work. I was really skeptical at one point because when I was doing the trade rooms in the beginning and it didn't work for me, I was like, this is all a scam. This is a scam. Everybody's scamming me. But I start realizing like it works for them. And then, they're just doing what works for them and showing it to people. But it may not work. It probably doesn't work for a lot of the majority of the population of people, right? You have to realize, what works for you and what you're doing and really believe in it. If you don't believe in it, then you're going to be scared, get out of trades too early, or you're not going to let things play out. There's so many things that are going to happen if you don't believe in what you're doing. And so I think that's the number one thing.
How do you manage your fear? Because even myself, I struggle with fear. I mean, when I look at the trade I took today on the ISM manufacturing, I jumped out of that trade like a scared lunatic instead of holding. So, how do you manage your fear when you're in a trade?
Uh, I have a I have a coin that I hold on to, and the first thing I think you used to know this, I used to walk away from my computer just to prove a point to myself that I can hold a trade, and then after I like built confidence and saw that um, I can hold a trade and it's not that bad, like it's not going to go against me. I think you have to do those little baby steps. I think, but you always have fear. There's always going to be fear there. Um, I think just accepting your risk, and knowing that your probabilities, again, it goes back to my rule. It's like if you're not confident in what you're doing, you're always going to be really scared, because you don't believe in what you're doing enough. So that is the first thing. And once you even overcome that, you still have a little bit of fear every now and then. It just won't be as strong as when you don't believe. So I think the thing is I always have fear, but I know it's not as close to how I used to feel. So you kind of get used to that feeling. It's like when I play basketball, I'm always nervous for the game. It's not like because I don't believe I'm going to be good. It's just that I just want to just dominate. So you always have that feeling.
Yep, I agree. How about do you use a average daily, do you use a loss amount that will make you stop trading on a day, or do you, and then in the
Yeah.
opposite side, do you have a winning amount that'll make you stop trading?
I do not have a winning side anymore. I have a daily loss from 500 to 1,000.
Okay. That's a good way to do it, I think. I don't, I
Yeah.
definitely, with news trading, having a daily loss can be tricky because you might have four really worthwhile news trades to take in one day and
Yep.
you might lose $900 on one trade. It's possible.
But this is how you do it though. So that's true. But now you're thinking of day versus week because there's also some days where you don't trade as much. So let's say like I'm risking like $500 to 1,000. So let's just round up to 1,000. So then that's 5,000 for a week. If I don't trade on Monday and Tuesday, then those 2 days are 2,000. All right.
Right.
So if you don't have, you can think of it that way too. You still have the days that you didn't trade as much, so it all averages out anyways. I don't trade on Fridays.
Right.
Right. So you can think of it that way. And then also too, what I do too is how well my week's going. I also can, that means I'm up. So then there's some trades that I'll tend to try to ride a little bit more based off of what I'm up, the week, because now, I'm working with gains at that point too. So it all could be adjusted, but you got to keep it at you don't want to lose so much in a week.
Right.
Ultimately, it's about the week, not really the day, I guess, for me.
That's good. I think that's good. And what about when you lose your first trade? Do you find it especially difficult now to come back and trade again? A lot of traders, if they have a loss, they just can't even function, sometimes for days. You know what I mean? So I would assume that you don't have much trouble if you have a couple of bad trades.
Actually, it's opposite. I have better weeks when I lose. When I start the week down, it's sort of weird, but like my first couple of trades, I don't know what it is. They're not good, and then I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a great week. I'm always thinking the opposites. So but no, I take a couple of losses and I keep doing what I see.
Yeah, you got to take it in stride.
Yeah.
Is there anything I left out from anything specific to any of your setups that you want to share with people that you think I didn't ask?
No, I think I covered it all. I actually wrote some little things. The prior week I do that. I do 3 minutes on gold, 5 minutes on Nasdaq and crude. I play the VWAP band as my indecision.
Okay.
I look for large values for counter trend directions, and large values in terms of tick stripe going the other way to look for, change momentum, counter trends. I think I covered everything.
Great. I think this was a great, great interview for me. I really enjoyed meeting you in person, sort of, for the first time. It's really a pleasure. Mark, I can't thank you enough for all the nice things you've done for me and the members in the room. And I want to thank you, tremendously.
Well, I should thank you because I was looking for that software. If I didn't have the software, I'd be still trying to figure it out right now. I'm
Right. So
on myself.
it's been a great mutual experience for us. And I'll see you in the room on Monday. Thanks so much for taking part in this. It's been awesome.
No problem. I'll see you Monday. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too. Take care.
See you later.
So long.